Welcome to this early access episode number 3 of the Bithell Games podcast. I'm Alexander Sliwinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell. Hello.
Each week we'll talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't generally find time to talk about because we are playing and or making games. We'll also regularly have guests on. No, I totally failed on that one. We don't have a guest this week. We talked about it last week, but we're still working at the kinks on on getting guests on this show. But yeah, we'd like to have guests on the show who could.
I feel so alone, Alexander. We need other people here.
We do. it's just the two of us staring at each other through the internet,
making castles in the sky. Just the two of us, you and I.
So anyway, we're supposed to provide an inside look at a particular aspect of the video game industry. Well, they are. The guest is, who's not on the show this week, but soon. Soon. Stick with us. We'll make it happen. So, what are you playing?
I'm very much into Lego Dimensions. I have been for a while, but we just got some new sets, so we've been playing with that. I do, yeah. I'm everyone who knows me knows I'm a massive Lego fanboy anyway. Like I buy far too much Lego.
You went to the Legolands, right?
I was invited by Lego to speak at the Lego company headquarters in Denmark, and they gave me a free ticket to the theme park as well. Only one day though, and I was there for 2, so I did end up paying for a day at Legoland too. So they got their money back. That's good.
So what did you speak to the Legos about making games using rectangular objects?
Yeah, basically they were feeling like they needed an update on squares and blocks. No, it was just a design. So what they do, and a lot of kind of the really big kind of creative companies do this, is they have kind of internal, external training where, because of who they are, they can bring in people. So I know Pixar does similar things, but Lego does this thing where, if a few people in the office like the things someone does, then they'll get that person invited in to do a talk. And it was an absolute, honor and privilege to go there. And yeah, I just talked about design. I'll be honest with you, it was 50% me geeking out about Lego. It was cute. Because I went to Legoland as a very young kid in Denmark. So I had all these photos of me about age 5, sitting surrounded by Lego and giggling. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to go back. And
did you take photos of yourself in exactly the same poses for when you were older, and then you could have given that to BuzzFeed and gotten
it would have been gold, solid gold. We no, because we didn't, because I got kind of just excited about being there. But it was good, and I got to see some new Lego sets. So I got to see all the Jurassic World Lego sets before, like months and months before they were even announced. Which because that's the other thing I'm really into is Jurassic Park. So that was cool.
That's how I felt about the Spice Girls.
How do you mean?
Because when I was in Greece in my teens, the Spice Girls had just come out. And so they were really hot and popular in Greece. And then I came back to the States, and then they didn't show up for 6 months later.
What I love about this is we're both being hipsters, but we're being hipsters about like mega corporations. I heard about that band before you did, but with multi-billion companies. Good.
Spice Girls are now doing Target ads, by the way.
Are they? I'm trying
or was
to think
it Walmart?
Because they tried to launch a Broadway show. No, see, I'm already localizing. A West End show. They tried to launch a West End, like one of these jukebox musicals. And I don't feel like that really works. Like, I feel like that show's not on anymore.
A jukebox musical?
Have you not heard this term before?
Is that like is this like what ABBA is?
Yeah, exactly.
Mamma Mia?
It's where you take like a back catalogue of pre-existing songs and stitch them together into a musical.
We Will Rock You.
Exactly, yeah.
Mamma Mia.
It's very interesting from a music licensing point of view, but I'm not sure our audience is necessarily. This is going to be something
one of those guests we talk about.
Let's bring in someone from like musical, theatre, business side. No, but it's a very popular form of music.
Actually, we know a music licensing guy, don't we? We should probably get
we should get him in on. He can talk to us about this stuff. I've been speaking of musicals, so just completely spinning off now in multi directions. Hamilton. Have you heard Hamilton? Have you heard of Hamilton?
Are we talking about Alexander Hamilton, who graces our $10 bill?
It's a musical about his life. It's a rap musical. And do you know what's brilliant about it is that my reaction, it's really good.
Stop.
And it shouldn't be. right? Because Hamilton, the rap musical, like, shouldn't work, and yet it really does. It's awesome. I was recommended it over the weekend by someone, and I've been listening to it. And like,
because typically we take the rap out of the music, like Fame the musical. Like everyone cringes when it gets to the rap part in Fame the musical.
Yeah, but this is actual rappers. I think that's the big distinctions. This is not a bunch of kind of Glee Club kind of dropouts doing rap. This is like
not a bunch of Johnny Tremaines just showing up.
This is like actually people who can do the raps. But it works. It's really good.
Not
I really
just a
enjoyed
bunch
that.
of Betsy Rosses.
You're using references that are way before my time right now. I don't know what you're
just a bunch
about.
of Ichabod Cranes on stage.
I once sat in a restaurant on a table, and on the right table of me was the entire cast of Spartacus, and on the left table of me was the entire cast of Glee. That was a weird meal.
Were you at the BAFTAs?
No, I was at I'm just name dropping like nobody's business today. I was at Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, like a couple of years ago now. With I was working on a game based on Merlin, the BBC TV show.
Oh, we're gonna have to. That's gonna be. We need to have a segment called Story Time.
Yeah.
I think Merlin is gonna be one of those story.
Merlin
time
is a story time thing. But yeah, so anyway, we were there just in the a nice restaurant in San Diego where I guess all the TV people were going. But it was a very strange evening.
I want to meet the cast of Glee.
I didn't meet them. I just sat on a table with them next to me, and because I wasn't really into Glee, like I've seen it, like I spent like a good 20 minutes going like, I recognize that woman. I've seen her on something.
You mean
I recognize that guy.
Are you talking about Lea Michele?
Probably, because I at some point I just I don't. Never again will I ask anyone in American TV this question. It was like, do I know the cast over there? And they got really excited. They went, oh my God, that is the cast of Glee, Mike. You're sat next to the cast of Glee right now. That was an awful accent. I apologize. I understand if you don't want to do the podcast. This has gone in a really weird direction.
No, it's fine, because I'm trying to remember the time that I was in the parking lot at Doyle's here in Boston, and I go up to this, a very beautiful woman, clearly who I'm recognizing, like walks out of Doyle's, and I'm like, you're that actress from that show.
You said this to her. That's awesome.
And she turned around and she says like, yeah, hi, I'm Angie Harmon. I'm like, yes, you are.
Who's Angie Harmon? What's she from?
Angie Harmon's from Law and Order and Rizzoli and Isles.
Okay, I don't watch either of those shows, so...
Law and Order was a long-running...
I know of Law and Order. I've seen like parodies of Law and Order on every other show that I do watch.
Because you have to understand, in the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crimes and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories.
Is that the one that's produced by Dick Wolf?
Yes.
Awesome. I know that's the only thing I know about Law and Order is it's produced by a guy called Dick Wolf.
So Lego Dimensions. What sets do you have?
That's where we started. What sets have I got? I've got obviously like the starter pack. Then I've got the Benny set, which is the spaceman from the movie.
So the starter set comes with Batman,
Gandalf, and Wildstyle.
And Wildstyle's from the Lego movie.
And Wildstyle's from and then Benny the spaceman. I've got Back to the Future.
I have the Lego space train set that has like all the Bennies.
Yeah, that's retro, man. That's good.
Yeah.
That's classic. That's classic Lego. And then I got Back to the Future set, which was all right. Got the Portal set, which was fantastic. For a Portal fan, it's just fan service after fan service.
Did they get the dude who was the voice of Marty McFly in those Telltale games?
It sounds like him. Yeah. It sounds like him. I think
he was amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing mimic. The Back to the Future one's really interesting because basically each of the story packs you have like a level, like a progression based standard kind of video game level, right? And an open world. And with and the open worlds are fun, but you just kind of run around and collect things, and there's not really much. It doesn't feel like you're being told a story or going through space. And the level is where they do like a little narrative. And what's really interesting is they're clearly experimenting with like the balance of those two aspects, because Portal is like a proper little, hour to 2 hour Portal game, right? Like made with Lego though. It's a really cool level progression, and then kind of quite a basic, simple open world where you're just running around some laboratories. Whereas Back to the Future is like this really short level, but then this open world where you can jump back and forward in time, and you can do loads of things in the open world. So it's interesting how they're playing with that. I've got the Doctor Who set. I've got.
So wait, hold on. Explain this, mate. So you have the Lego Dimensions game, like the core.
That's like your starter pack. That's like that's the set where it's got the portal on it. It's kind of the base station. Yeah.
So does every single one of these little box sets, is that like a 2 hour chunk of game? Like, or is it like what's how much game do you get for each one of these sets?
So there's two kinds. Well, there's like three kinds, isn't there? But there's the bigger sets, which are over here. They're £30, and those are your like level sets. Those are Back to the Future, Portal, Doctor Who, and those are your kind of 1 or 2 hours of like core gameplay for £30. But you can then take the characters from them and the abilities they have and use them in different scenarios. So you're kind of collecting that as well. So like my go-to vehicle now is a portal turret that I've modified so it can be ridden around by any character. So I'm running around levels on a portal turret in every other level we get. Then you have like the smaller sets, which are just like a character and a vehicle, or a couple of characters and an object, or something like that.
So now, do you have to keep the discs? So like the RFID discs that you put these characters on.
Yeah.
Do you have to keep the discs like in the portal? This is problematic now. The gate area, or does the game remember that you've owned that set, and so you can just like you can access any of, because if you buy all the sets, right, like not all the tokens are going to
fit on the board,
are going to fit on that thing.
No, you do have to put them on the thing when you want to use them, and take them off when you don't want to use them. But that works, and they use that as a mechanic. So you're actually at the stage me and Kerry are at now, where we're juggling, where we're like, well, we want the Batmobile, but we really need those two people involved in this scenario. So we have to. So you're like juggling who's on there, and also then there's a lot of mechanics in the game that get you to move the characters to different parts of the board. So like some tiles will shine different colors, and you if you want Batman to have you to paint yellow paint, then you move him to the yellow tile on the board and stuff like that. So you're constantly playing and rearranging that board. That's a big part of what the game is, which was surprising to me. I expected it to be kind of like Skylanders, where it's just, I want to play with this now, put it on the thing, and then you're playing. But there's a lot of actually moving and rearranging on the board.
So does it come with a long enough cord then to get it close to you?
Yeah, I mean, remember I'm British, so like my living room is probably about a quarter of the size of yours. But yeah, it's a couple of meters, couple of meter long cable. So we have it on the.
That is value,
we have it on
folks.
We have it on the coffee table in front of us on the sofa, and we sit and play, and it works really nicely. And for me, what's really weird is a lot of the brands that they've incorporated are things I love. So like any game where I can have Doctor Who and Shell from Portal running around saving the world as Marty McFly runs past, like that's amazing to me. That's just like that's three of my favorite things.
Yeah, the licensing on that game is just out of not out of control in a bad way, like out of control in a really, really good way. It's just
they've been super smart and very selective. Like you got to imagine that there's kind of quote unquote lesser brands that have come to them that they've said no to, right? Because we're only talking top tier kind of franchises.
Because
very cool.
It's Warner, it's Universal, it's Valve, it's BBC. Like there's a bunch of different companies.
Fox with The Simpsons.
Oh, that's right.
Then you've got some DC stuff. You haven't got the Marvel stuff, but I assume that's because of Disney Infinity. Like that's what they're using all those characters in their own Toys to Life game. But yeah, it's really cool, and it's still a Lego game. Like it plays like Lego Star Wars or like anything in between. But the board mixes it up, and I'm a Lego fan. I like the aesthetic of Lego, and I'm a fan of a lot of the kind of the licenses they brought in. So yeah, for me, it works. It's an expensive game for sure. Like in terms of like If you're buying all the pieces and putting it together, then that cost piles up. But the moment I realized it was working was I went to my local video game shop. We still have a few. I went to my local video game shop, and literally on the shelf was the game I'd gone in there to buy, which was the most recent Transformers game. And then next to it on the shelf was like a little Lego Dimensions character pack. I think it was the Benny and his spaceship. And I just looked at those two, and it was like, and they were about the same price. And I just thought, no, I'll just get a thing for Lego Dimensions because me and Kerry can enjoy that together. And I think that's the powerful thing of this is it's that you're building up that thing. And as me and Kerry have always played the Lego games together because it's a nice game to share in co-op. So yeah, it just works. Really like it.
I haven't gone into a Toys R Us or a Walmart to see if Lego Dimensions is with the Legos or if it's with the video games. Like if those expansion, because obviously the starter pack I'm sure is in the video game section, but I would be curious to see if the expansion sets are just in the Lego section, because Toys R Us obviously has like a massive Lego section.
I know Lego collectors who've got the sets but haven't got the game. That's a level of fandom which is impressive, because there's certain if you want the Portal stuff, then you have no choice but to buy this because there is no Portal set. Doctor Who has its own standalone set, which I just picked up a couple of weeks ago, which is very good. So you can get those toys separately, but like there's some stuff in there. Lego have been very clever in putting exclusive stuff in these sets to make them appeal to even people who aren't gamers. So yeah, it's all in all, it's really, I think it's just really, really polished, really well done. And yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of friends who work on the Lego games and kind of, they're good people as well. They're clearly trying to create great family experiences. So I respect on that level as well.
Any other sets that you're looking forward to or that are coming up?
Well, the big ones are, you've got, I think Ghostbusters is happening like early next year, which is cool. Another, license that I'm a big fan of. At the moment, we're mainly piling up the additional side test kind of toys. So we're just grabbing just all the individual characters. There's a few under the Christmas tree, I believe. So yeah, it's but yeah, I think for now they've only announced up to next year. I think the big one at the start of next year is Ghostbusters, but then I don't think they've announced anything else yet. So I assume there'll be some new sets imminent based on the other brands that Lego have relationships with.
Yeah.
It's cool. Star Wars, I wouldn't. Oh no, Star Wars, of course, is Disney as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing, is they won't go near that.
Yeah, that's Disney Infinity.
Which I also have like a Yoda kicking around, but I need to get that at some point and try it out and see if it's good.
Well, I think I also saw a commercial yesterday for Skylanders that has Bowser and Donkey Kong in it.
Yeah, Nintendo have done a deal, haven't they, with Amiibos? So Skylanders and Amiibos are like, I don't know if they're compatible or if I assume they're new Skylanders which are based on Nintendo characters. But yeah, I've seen that they're forming a relationship, which I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of that, to be honest, if that kind of stuff will, works for everyone. Compatibility it's always surprising when you see console guys like going outside of their silos, but at the same time, like I can see it making some sense financially. Because
Skylanders is massive too.
Yeah, I never played Skylanders. I've got a sculpture of a character from Skylanders that I once won as a booby prize in a competition. Because I think it's adorable, but someone thought it was ugly, so I ended up winning it because I did very badly at a game of poker. So rock and roll.
So I've been continuing my epic dive into Fallout.
The corporate capitalism simulator that you've gotten yourself into,
which I have now gotten my towns to very cleanly connect with each other. Everything is being shared, so I have decided to continue my main quest plotline, which I resolved or didn't resolve. Game gets a little confusing there for a second. I still don't know how I'm feeling about this.
Is that by design? Are they intentionally going for ambiguity, or do you think you've run into like a technical problem?
Well, what's weird is that you are stuck with a choice, and I decided to not make a choice. And so then I went out to try to do some side missions while I thought about my choice. And there is a whole set of characters now that will not attack me. But I'm on a mission with someone from another faction, and those characters are attacking them, but they're not attacking me.
Okay.
So I kind of feel I broke the game.
A Bethesda game with a bug.
But that's the thing, is like, there's the argument that it's not a bug, because if I attack them, then they will begin attacking me. But I've essentially created a loophole in the system, which broke my immersion.
Right.
And that's sort of the frustrating aspect of it, because I've invested so much time into this game at this stage that I'm getting to that part where I feel I need to make a copy of my save and save it to the cloud just in case my PS4 dies and I have some kind of problem. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. And I didn't think this would happen. And I can see that they put that in the game so that you would take some time to think about your choice. But all it's doing is clearly breaking my immersion as I go off. But it's the one of the main reasons I bring this up is in Fallout 3. Do you know the great plot hole in Fallout 3?
I don't, because I hit a game-breaking bug on an auto-save about 5 hours in and rage quit the game forever. So, go on.
So, in Fallout 3, the original Fallout 3, there was the end of the game, and I will try to avoid the spoiler aspect of this.
It's been a while. I think you can probably safely talk about it. Spoilers, please jump ahead 5 minutes if you don't want to hear about a game that was released, 8 years ago or so
well,
now?
I never like to put that caveat on things. Like, okay. I would prefer to say that I'm going to try to avoid being specific.
Go on then, yeah.
There is a part in the game where you have to go inside of a chamber with a massive amount of radiation. And the idea is that you either sacrifice yourself or you sacrifice your companion. And the original version of Fallout 3 just ended, right? So you either sacrificed your companion and there was the epilogue and that was the end of the game, or you sacrificed yourself, to to this scene in the Capital Wasteland, and that just ended. The problem was that I had a companion who was a super mutant. You could also have a companion who was a robot. And you would just be like, well, you go in there.
You're a robot.
You go and do this thing.
Yeah.
And the
game treated you as if you'd murdered your friend.
Well, I can't remember if it went that way or if it just didn't allow you to send in a companion.
Right.
Like in the original version, like it was, I can't remember it that well. But then eventually when they did the Brotherhood of Steel expansion, they fixed that. Like you could send in your super mutant buddy and they would do it. And it's just like, I'm so clever, right? Like I didn't have to go in there and I didn't have to sacrifice a friend because you're a super mutant. And of course you'll survive the radiation. But that was a huge plot hole in the original version of Fallout 3. And I feel like this is that plot hole in Fallout 4, that thing that just should get fixed or tweaked whenever the march of DLC kicks off at some point in the near future. But yeah, other than that, it's been the great experience, the classic Bethesda role-playing game.
Yeah, and I'm always very jealous of people who love the Bethesda RPGs. I've just never really gotten into one. I can see from the outside how great they are. It's I don't know, they never get their hooks into me in the same way as like BioWare. Forget about it. Any BioWare game I'm going to love. But Bethesda, it's something to do with their pacing, I think, or maybe I don't like the freedom. I think that might be an aspect of it that I like to have options, but I like to be walking down a path.
See, and that was the thing about this situation, because this is the key plot line, like the main plot line in the game, and it sort of like stops, right. And you're kind of you just turn around and you go, what's my motivation? And there's the argument to be made that well, they now give you the option to figure out what your motivation is, and there's an argument to be made here of, well, I can understand that for a sort of subplot, but I think the protagonist or the player inhabiting that world should always have a direction in terms of the main plot line to keep them moving forward, rather than going, okay, so what do I do now?
I think for me as well, and this obviously isn't the case for everyone, but I spend my days working out like how characters should behave and what their motivations are and all this stuff. And when I play a video game, I kind of want to pay someone else to do that for me. If you know what I mean? Like I'm offloading that job. So I've never RPGs. I always love the idea of RPGs, but I don't. There's not been many outside of BioWare that I've really kind of fallen in love with. I tend to be much more into the linear, kind of shorter experiences. Or Lego.
So, Mike,
yo,
what's going on? What's going on at the studio at the Bithell Games? What are we up to?
What are we up to? We're up to lots of things that we can't talk about, as is usually the case. But the thing I think that I've been most kind of openly talking about publicly is we're doing prototypes. We're in that stage where volume obviously has come out. The immediate jobs on that have kind of finished. The ports are finishing. So it kind of is in a point where...
Or starting. We can talk about that in another episode, but yeah.
Or starting, in a couple of cases. That's a job for another day. So it's sort of, and Coda is going really well as well. So it's at that point where we're starting to think about what the next projects could be. What we could be doing after this. And we talked last week about kind of the more kind of pitch process, kind of, concept art led approach. But that's not the only thing we're doing. And, to keep me sane, I think to a little extent as well, we're also building some prototypes. And one of them is going kind of particularly well, and is starting to feel fun. And we're starting to work out what that might kind of turn into as a final project. It's a fun process. So
now, walk me through the difference of prototyping in the sort of environment that you and I are in right now, where it's what you want and you can sort of figure things out, compared to your sort of studio life of how you would prototype when there's 3 or 4 different projects going on and a pitch is accepted. Yeah. And then you have to figure out okay, how do we go about doing this? So let's start with prototyping the way you're doing it now, and then the way you did it when you were at a much bigger sort of studio.
So I mean, it does vary, and but the answers to both of those questions vary. But I guess the major difference is in intent, and whether you know the end point. So if we're, let's say, obviously, we talked about it last week, we're doing a pitch. Let's say that progresses and we decide to start prototyping that. We already have discussed what that is. We know what the game is. We know what it looks like. We know how it plays on a high level. So the prototype's job is, a prototype is always basically to test a theory. It's an experiment. So the experiment there would be, are we right in all of these assumptions? Yeah, and you try and make the thing that you've pitched and see if it works, and see where maybe you need to tweak things or change things or whatever. Whereas the kind of prototyping where it's kind of personally kind of driven is much more about just experimenting. It's more like jamming. It's more like you just sit and fiddle with the guitar until you find something that works. And, in this case, I had a very simple idea for an interaction that I liked, that I didn't think I'd seen done. just a very small, very specific mechanic. So I just started making a system that would play in that way, and then things grow out of that, and you find, okay, well, if we're going to do that, then this needs to happen, and you kind of build it much more organically. It's about whether you're starting from a seed or whether you know where your end point is that you're aiming for. But in both cases, that the reason it's called prototyping is because you're not sure if it's going to work. It's an experiment. It's never. You're not prototyping. It's not development in the sense that you're aiming to right, we're going to sit down and we're going to professionally build this and make this product. It's more, does this even work? And you'll find prototypes as well, especially in bigger companies, that are not focused on, let's make a game. It's focused on, can we make this character move in an interesting way? I'm sure that an example of this would be, say, Assassin's Creed. One of the first prototypes I'm sure Assassin's Creed got was that mechanic where you climb buildings and the hands hit in the right points. I'm sure that was a prototype. They will have taken that little thing and they will have, is this possible, basically? And then they will have experimented to see if it was, and found that it didn't work for these reasons, and changed and tweaked and fiddled. And you slowly work your way up to something a bit more kind of solid, and knowing when to solidify and when to experiment more is part of the art of it. It's just kind of you're whittling towards something, and you don't want to go too fast because you don't want to arrive at something that's not the best solution. But also, if you leave it forever, you can spend 5 years prototyping something and never actually get to something that you can release and people can play. So
when do you feel a prototype is ready to move to the next stage? Because obviously, having covered game development for a long time and you having been in it, we have both seen those examples that you're talking about, where someone is prototyping for years.
Yeah,
and there comes a point where it's when does that transition point happen for you? Let's not talk about other people. Let's talk about you. When does that transition point happen for you, when you feel a prototype is ready to start putting into, quote, a game?
I think it's the scientific analogy that I used before. It's as long as you have a hypothesis you're trying, sitting down and going, let's make something fun, is not going to get you somewhere good. You're never going to create the perfect video game, so you're going to spend a long time prototyping in that scenario.
You mean the user story isn't let's make something fun?
No, it's not. This Alexander, for our listeners, Alexander discovered the term user story yesterday and has become fascinated by it. We'll
have that on a future episode.
Yeah. So no, it's not make something fun. It's this idea we have. Does that work? And as long as you define a very specific question, then that means that prototyping lasts until you've answered the question. And honestly, it depends on the complexity of what you're trying to do, but usually that's not more than a few weeks to kind of get to a stage where you can answer that very specific question. So in our case specifically, I had this interaction, I had this idea of something that would be cool to play with, and a way of playing a game, and it was just a case of let's take a week or two and let's find out, is that good? And I think we kind of got that to a stage where both of us agreed. This was a while ago now, but we agreed, yeah, there's something to this. This is interesting. It's a nice interaction. And then, you start answering other questions. So the question we answered this week was, would this very specific kind of meta structure work for this kind of game? So we prototyped that, and yeah, that does work. That feels good as well. So we're lucky. We've gone 2 for 2 so far. And I think now that's hitting that point where I feel like the big unknowns of that project from a game design point of view have sort of been answered. So now we're getting to a stage where we're working out so how does this look, and what's the vibe of this game?
Do you have an example of when things go wrong? When a prototype has just gone wrong?
Yeah, I mean, Thomas Was Alone is a brilliant example of this. So Thomas Was Alone we were building a prototype. We wanted to make a game about 2 characters who were tied together with a rope. And you would have 2 characters, and you could control each of them one at a time, and then you would connect a rope between them, and you could use one character to kind of swing the other character around. And I got the 2 characters, and I made them so they could jump, and you could switch between them, and then got to the rope, and a combination of realizing that was not fun or predictable, what would happen with the rope, how that swing, you couldn't plan around it very easily, it wasn't very good. And also that it was kind of hard to do and hard to make something that was predictable but also looked like realistically on a physical level, like this is how a rope would actually swing a character. So we removed the rope and, introduced the idea, would it be equally fun if one of those characters could jump higher? So with good prototyping, it's not about necessarily failure as much as just course correction, as going so far with something and going, well, that didn't work, but let's carry on in this direction. And that's how Thomas Was Alone happened. Thomas Was Alone was, by that definition, a failed prototype. So it's a point in time where you have the freedom to make those decisions. Right now this game it's just me working on it. So if in 2 weeks' time we're playing it and we're like, this is not going anywhere, then it's not an amazing loss. It's not a massive problem, and it's something that we can take our time with and see what works and see what doesn't work. But I feel like one of the prototypes right now is very specifically at a point where that feels like it's ready to basically be now turned into a real game.
So now at a larger studio where you do the pitch process and the client has, given you the go ahead, how do you, I'm guessing you have to stay within specific genre conventions because, the client is paying for something or is funding something specific.
You can't change course completely, no. It's what prototypes become on that kind of scale of project is very specific problem solving. So if let's say you're making a first person shooter and you've pitched for a first person shooter and you've gotten the money or the support or whatever for a first person shooter, you can't come back to them and go, well, we figured it should be a turn-based RPG. That's not going to fly. But what you do in the prototyping stage there would be, okay, so we want to have this cool kind of grenade where you throw it and it does this, this, and this.
Well, does the pitch ever have, do you ever tell the publisher or the client or whatever that what is that experimental thing that you're going to be doing inside there, and that's the thing that you prototype? Or is the prototype more, no, every single time we are making a game, we have to prototype, even if it's our third platformer, right?
Oh yeah, no, well you're never, if you already know the answer to a question, there's no point doing the prototype. So if you already know that if you've made Mario, you don't need to prototype the jump again. You've got that, and if it was well received and if people liked it, then that's done. It's new stuff. I mean, honestly, the pitch process, there are definitely ambiguities in it. You don't go to someone and describe in absolute detail, like, this is exactly how this will work. You leave a certain amount of vagueness in there just to give yourself room to work out what that is. The objective, and that's usually what the client in that situation wants, is they want to know what you're aiming towards. They want to know what the marketing department can spin into its own thing. So to use a recent example, let's say the Nemesis system, right, in Shadow of Mordor. The pitch document there, probably when that company pitched for that project, if it was done in that way, will have had a couple of pages on the Nemesis system, and it will have expressed this Nemesis system will allow for characters to remember you and this and that, and the overall sense of what the Nemesis system is. But in terms of how that system works and what variables link to what and what that menu looks like and all of the actual kind of design in order to deliver that vision, that's the stuff that they will have to have. But would you even pitch that
to a suit?
I think you'd have to. I think if they went into that room and said, because, I love Shadow of Mordor, but outside of the Nemesis system, it's Assassin's Creed with orcs, right?
Right.
If you pitched Assassin's Creed
and
with
there's no
orcs,
shame in that.
There is no shame. And to be fair, it's better than a lot of Assassin's Creeds.
Yeah.
So,
well, that was the thing when that game came out.
It delivers on that.
No, that was my game of the year. So
mine too, I'd say, actually, that year, yeah.
And it was the most refined Assassin's Creed game, in years,
really tight controls, really, really solid game. But I would expect the Nemesis system. I mean, obviously I'm working from a position here of having absolutely no knowledge of how this actually went down, but I would assume that they wouldn't have pitched it's Assassin's Creed with orcs. They would have pitched it's Assassin's Creed with orcs, but here is our innovative system and structure that allows you to actually have a sense that you're impacting the relationships and politics of these groups. Didn't it start, actually? Wasn't that one that started
as a
gangster game, right?
That's the rumor. And you know what?
Which fits, actually. That fits the mechanic.
We actually know some folks over there. I think they should be a guest.
That would be an excellent,
because it's been a couple years now, so I think we're past the loose lips sink ships portion of
cool.
of stuff. So
no, I'd love to talk about that system because it's very interesting. But yeah, it would prototypes answer questions, and you don't always have to prototype. I've been on games where we've had, say, a 9-month turnaround time, and you haven't got time. Like that was, when we were working on like a Wii platforming game or something. You got 9 months to ship a game with like 10 levels. You don't have time to answer questions. You find what works and you just plow on. So there's
the
that
question is, how do we get out of this alive? That's the
exactly prototype. Yeah. How do you survive this? How do you keep the publisher happy in those situations? Yeah. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. I don't think prototyping has to happen. I think some people, I would say, actually do too much prototyping. I mean, there's in terms of. It's very easy to get excited because the great thing about prototyping is, well, you've seen this. Like you get stuff done very quickly and it feels really rewarding and you get to show off to your colleagues and go, hey, I made a whole game, and that's exciting and cool. But if you're just doing that, then you're not actually ever going to release a game or finesse anything or finish anything or polish anything. So it's always a balancing act because it's an incredibly rewarding, as a game developer, it's an incredibly rewarding way to work because you're seeing something new every day, which is always exciting.
So we're starting to move out of the early access portion of the Bithell Games podcast. We're getting there. We've got a few more kinks to work out, but we're almost there. In terms of reader mail, we still don't have any reader mail because we just went live on the
iTunes.
On the iTunes.
So people could download this. Someone could be listening to this.
Yes.
That's amazing.
They could be listening to it right now. So if you'd like to contact us or have a reader question, comment, whatever, that's contact at bithelgames.com. Contact, CONTACT, at bithelgames, BITHELL games.com. And thanks for listening to this early access episode number 3 of the Bithell Games podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews, 5 stars on iTunes if you can. Subscribe, like, heart whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. Thanks for joining us again. And I'm Alexander Sliwinski. We'll be back next week. Get in the last word, Mike.
Los polos hermanos.